So awakening is the end of identification with the self. And that self is something we take ourselves to be, the mind, which is the thought stream. So identity falls away from that, and it's seen that thought simply arises spontaneously from nowhere. And disappears without anyone having to do anything. And identification with the body as well. The sense of someone in here and life out there, that division collapses and there's just what is. And this tends to happen in two events. It can be seen all at once, or it can be seen in two distinct kind of events. The first of which would be the seeing of emptiness. And hi. And the seeing of emptiness is not necessarily a pleasant experience, it's just the dissolving of that identity, the seeing of the void, basically that there's nothing, there's no one, there never was anyone, so all things are not here, so everything's appearing in nothing, so that the form and formless are one, so there's just what is arising for no one. And with that seeing, there can be a release from desire. Motivation can fall away, and there's a sense of equilibrium that's not altogether, like I say, it's not the full seeing, and if you know that, it can be quite upsetting for the one who's seen that, because there's nothing you can do to experience the seeing of unconditional love. So, Hi. Hi. So unconditional love it's like boundless joy. It's an intimacy with all of life. It's basically, that's the game changer. So it's the end of seeking, it's the end of needing to go anywhere to add anything to what is. So everything's already perfected, it's already seen, it's seen that there is only perfection, there is only the sacred, is only stillness, and that you are not separate from that. There is no you to be separate from that. So, and that is rest and deep peace. And in that seeing, the mind can fall away absolutely, and it may stay away completely, so that there's just no interference. There's the absorption in the mind is released, so there's just the absorption in what is, which is very, very restful. So what tends to happen is a lot of interruption. Hi. Yeah, because this is beyond the mind, you cannot, there's nothing that can give you, you can maybe get a slight taste of this, but really the experience of unconditional love is so beyond the mind, it's so beyond our comprehension, that it can, it's like stepping into another life entirely. It's a different way of being, it's a completely new perspective. And so suddenly there's no need to do anything, there's no need to go anywhere, everything is already realized, everything is already right here, where you are. And for a long time you can stay in that space. So the honeymoon period tends to occur where really you just want to sink into that, just it's often talked about maybe 6 months, a couple of years, however long it is, where you're just so absorbed in what's happening around you. There's being in nature, just seeing the aliveness of nature, everything seems to be alive, and it's just the breathtaking beauty of everything is seen and enjoyed. And so the sacred dimension is seen in everything as well, so it's visual. The sense of the self is gone, there's no sense of location, so there's no here, there's no there. There is just what's happening. So the identification with time is gone, time is the mind stream, and that is gone, so there's just the timeless present, which isn't really present, but it's just that time can still be accessed because the character still lives in time, experiences time, communicates in time. So the character's life continues as before, but the experience of that is different. So that it's like empty space in a way, and so it's utter humility in one sense, because there's no difference between the person here and the person, every other person. So and we're all striving after that peace, and so this comes as a complete shock, because it's total, because it's not conditional peace, it's not it just can't be imagined. So when you're not here, everything is love. You know, when you're not there, everything is beauty, the perfection in everything is seen. So every face is beautiful, every flower, every tree, everything is just seen like I imagine it is in an artist's eye. It's just perfected, it's full, it's So we're born into this, we're born into wholeness, and we are seduced out of this. We're conditioned out of this, conditioned out of our wholeness into identification. Most of us are anyway, not everyone, but almost all of us are. So we forget. It's just a forgetting. So life is a forgetting, and we become so identified with the story, which is usually quite difficult. Most people's stories are really quite tricky at points, and we all, suffer because we know we're going to die, and it's almost impossible to come to terms with that. So there's something about the seeing of this that there's a let go of that. There's death is okay, or failure is okay. There is no failure in a sense. It's just how life goes. So there's just a deep acceptance of your own the life story here, and of everyone and everything. There's a deep acceptance. So there's no argument with reality. There's no you may not like someone or something, but there's the love, and that's within the love as well. There's a deep acceptance of whatever, however someone is as well. So there's none of this sort of, the shoulds and oughts tend to fall away in this as well. So there's much more, someone is how they are, life is how it is, and suffering, the relationship to that changes, because most of our suffering is mind-based, and the relationship with the mind is very different. So even if the mind does come back in, it's much more slow, it tends to be in the background, it tends not to have the same impact, or there's a difference between also the neurotic suffering, where there's constant rumination, and that tends to go. So if there's a real problem in your life, that can be difficult still, but it will not grasp hold in the mind in the same way. So it makes life easier and restful. So there's nothing, people have glimpses quite a lot, but the abiding state, there's nothing you can do to attain that, whether it stays, whether there's a glimpse, or it's a kind of grace, it's a kind of, you can't make this come about, although there's a lot of people selling a lot of techniques or whatever, there's no way of bringing this about. So if it's an awakening to emptiness, you may not know what's happened, but awakening to love, you will know that something good has happened, and you probably will have an idea of it. But and at some point, you may want to come back into the world and live your life, and when you wake up, basically you wake up in the circumstances in which you wake up. So those circumstances haven't changed, but the character has changed. So it can be difficult in that sense for some people, because you've changed and your life may not be the one that kind of suits this new life, because it's almost like a reincarnation. Like, it can be like that. It depends what's gone before. So if your life is very, very chaotic, if you really suffered, you get a lot of depression or a lot of mental turmoil, it can be very different. You can wake up into sanity, but your life may still be insane in some way. So it can take a while to update, to sort of align your life with, the way you're functioning now as well. So that could be a problem for some people. For other people, it just flows naturally. it flows. So, and it's the end of authority, at least in the sense of spiritual authority, because you realise that the one at the front is just as much of an asshole as everybody else. So like, there's a freedom there. But I think as well that freedom comes more from the more that's kind of owned as well, the awakening, because some people have a lot of doubts around this, which can fall away. Those tend to fall away, diminish, and hopefully go. And when they go, that sense of someone being in a different state is gone. So there can, obviously it depends on the person as well, there can be other projections can continue depending on the character and depending on their whether they have repression there, whether they have trauma there, or so it's different for everyone, and everyone says different things about this, but basically it's the end of the division between in here and out there, so it's a freedom, but life still has to be lived, so it's not it's absolute in one sense, but in another sense, in the relative sense, life still has to be negotiated, even though no one is doing that. So nobody is choosing, and yet we continue as if we have to make choices and we have to live our lives. I don't know if that's long enough. Has anybody got any questions at this point?
Is it linked to Hinduism, the non-duality?
Is it what, sorry?
Is it what you are telling us? Is it linked to Hinduism? The religion Hindu?
No, not particularly. Although, it's it all points to the same things: the awakening and the heart of all religions. Is kind of there. The mystical seeing, more or less clear. Some of it's got too much, quite a lot of dogma around it. There can be a lot of energetic experiences around this as well. So,
how can you experience that?
How can you what?
Experience.
It's either experienced or it's not experienced.
Mm.
You know, I mean, it's already the case anyway. So the experience of life is different, and it's hard to really. It's actually quite difficult sometimes to remember how life was, because there are times where it just feels like nothing matters, because there's nothing holding on to anything, because there's just nothing here. So it can be, it's energetically, it feels different, the body feels kind of weightless, and there's much more in touch with the spontaneity of everything. So it feels different, it's seen different. In the seeing itself, you know, the seeing of nothing and everything, it's known and it's seen. It's not necessarily seen, but it can be visually seen too, that there's nothing, and yet everything is arising in that. And the essence of that is love, which is experiences, because it's beyond the mind. None of the words kind of capture this at all. So, but so it affects. It affects life in the sense of when you're relating. There's none of the sense of strangeness. So everywhere's at home. Everywhere is home. So there's no where to go to get that, and there's a kind of merging with whatever arises as well. So that it's basically like an in loveness with everything. you know, without the kind of, so like when you fall in love, but without the kind of dependency on the object and the neediness and the, you know, it's just this, a very natural, it feels very natural. I think that's why it's not such a, it's a shock but not a shock at the same time, it's just very normal. Because it's so all-encompassing. Because there's no shock for anyone to have in a sense, so it's, you know, it's just suddenly your own nature, your true nature is just experienced. So the rest of it is kind of, you know, before and after. There's a before and after. I think for everyone that's kind of like, there's a line in the sand, but for some people who slide into this, it's a bit more difficult maybe to recognise it as well, because there's no, you may not know the point at which identification kind of ceased as
But
well.
there must be some technique to get that, I don't know, meditation, yoga, or are you doing something? No?
Meditation, well, nothing can bring in there. Meditation can sometimes, some meditative states that are attained, the state of consciousness could be similar, so there can be moments where it seems like the self falls away, you know, but it's still kind of happening to a person, it's not absolute, you know, and also the kind of the experience of being in the flow. Like if you're an artist or a writer and you're involved in your work, you know, and that tasking network in the brain is on, nothing else exists but just writing or just painting, and that's still coming from the same sort of source. You're just in what you're in. Of course, it's dependent on that activity. I mean, we've all probably all had experience of that state of consciousness. It's just not the absolute. The glimpse is the falling away of the self or the abiding state. It just doesn't come back. So, because a lot of people, they feel it seems to be a process of feeling constricted and then boundless, and then constricted and then boundless. That's the experience. Of course, it's basically all boundlessness. That's what this is. But so meditation is really good, because over time it does create more equilibrium, which kind of mimics, but to a small extent, it's not the same as, but it mimics that kind of more of the piece. But you know, it's very different as well. But yeah. And of course it can happen and you may not know it's happened at all, but, or you know, you may not recognise it. But it seems to be happening more often, more frequently now as well. So,
C'est what also we call nirvana, no?
Nirvana.
Or nibbana.
Nirvana. I expect so.
When you are liberated.
Well, it's kind of is heaven on earth. That's the experience. It's like that's what came to me for sure. Is like this is all sacred. This is holy. That's what was seen. Is, you know, there's no seeking it for that in any other way, or after death. I'm not saying that after death that there isn't something, but it is. It's heaven on earth. It's the sky that you see after awakening is not the same sky in my experiences before. The tree that you see is not the same tree. It is just, you know, what you saw before was so flat, so, you know, it didn't have that. When you see a tree after awakening, there's an absorption in that, there's a beauty in that, and an aliveness in that could not be imagined So it can be quite breathtaking. Because the filter of the mind, when it seems to have gone, it's like everything is much more alive and much more colourful and deeper somehow, almost like a different dimension to stuff. So just seeing a flower is like, it's kind of like kind of wow. It's you can stay with that. Unlike when you go on holiday and you see a sunset or something, it's beautiful, but after 3 seconds, you're having a glass of wine or something. It's much more. You can just stay in that. It doesn't tend to decay, because we get very distracted very, very easily generally. But this kind of takes that away. So there's almost like the more you sit with something, the more deeper you sink into that, the deeper you sink into love and what's around you. But it becomes more ordinary over time. Otherwise, you just sit in your horse for maybe not for everybody, but like for most people. So yeah, but yeah, yoga can. All these things, help in meditative state. But this is ongoing meditation. But it doesn't mean to say meditation is redundant. You could be awake and meditate. It can do other things, get in touch with your emotions, and help with health as well. So yoga as well can bring more energetic experiences. Kind of increase those if you're getting those, or I think energetic experience would give you a sense of this as well. So, there might be sort of partial insights, if you like, into kind of what this is, what reality, Not that anyone knows what this is. It's the great unknowing. But it give you some sort of, seeing is knowing. You can get a sense of that as well. And a lot of the awakenings from the research, there tends to be a lot in the histories of people who wake up of a lot of emotional turmoil, a lot of suffering, grief, that kind of thing. So it's as if the ego kind of just can't stand it anymore and kind of explodes. That's kind of, it seems like that a bit. But then sometimes it doesn't happen. People suffer and they just suffer and suffer and suffer. So it's hard to know. But so time exists and doesn't exist. It's experienced differently as well. So that you're just more where you are. So that when you're with somebody, you're more with them, and when they're gone, they're more gone. It's more like that. It's more like immediate experiences, kind of. You can access time, obviously, even if the mind isn't there. You don't really need the mind for. I think a lot of people think they need the mind for things, but except initially after awakening, some people the mind might go to such an extent that they don't recognize anything. They don't know what anything is. I think that's what happened with Yuji Krishnamurti. He didn't know what a cow was or what a cup of tea was, all that kind of stuff. He had to kind of relearn it. Some people get experience like that. I think Byron Katie had a little bit of that. I had a little bit of that as well, but only with certain things and only in for a while. But without the mind, you kind of know everything is. In any case, you don't really need it. yeah, there's a lot of conditioning around this as well. Like, you know, hear stories of people saying, you know, if you do a good deed for somebody, if there's no thought about it, it makes it kind of more noble. It's like, I was like, if the mind isn't there and you, I don't know, you help a old lady with her shopping, you know you're helping somebody with your shopping, and it doesn't really, I think for me it's like the end of all that. It doesn't matter that the mind is there or not, or you feel, oh good, look at me, I've just helped somebody. To me all that goes. It's like, who cares if there's a feeling of, oh, I've done something good or I haven't, or it's, and sometimes there's an urge to help and sometimes there isn't. Sometimes you recognise that everybody's okay, and so it's, I don't think it's, for me it's nothing to do with that. And yeah.
How does it feel when you do something bad? If you don't recognize that it's me who is doing something good?
Oh, I just feel terrible.
Oh yeah?
Like, a lot of people say no guilt, but like, yeah, if I do something bad, I do something bad. Yeah, there could be just normal reactions. I could feel shame about that. It depends what it is. Because yeah, there's more empathy for sure. Like, because there's more openness to that as well. But yeah, the capacity for doing, when it doesn't mean perfection, obviously, of character, and yeah.
But if you're awake, if you're awake, you never do anything bad, no?
Well, there's no one to do anything bad. Nobody's true. So yeah, there's no one to do anything bad. But yeah, in the world, it's, yeah. I mean, even the doing of something bad is kind of accepted. There's a kind of okayness with that, if you know what I mean. It's kind of, everything is kind of right. Well, that's what's happened. There's no arguing with that. You know, oh gosh, you know, well, maybe there is, but even that's accepted. Even the argument is accepted. You know what I mean? Everything is. There might be more capacity to recognise that you've done something bad, or because there's, you know, more space. There's more awareness of your inner processes, depending again on your repression, because you could be repressed and you might think you're doing bad, and actually you realise, hold on, I haven't been doing bad. So you know, because some of the patterns take a while to unwind, and they may never unwind unless life tends to kind of hit you in the face with the things you haven't figured out, you know, worked out. So it will, you know, there's a lot of stuff that life will bring up, and you'll realise more and more, because it's not total consciousness, because we have, you know, you can be repressed and be awake and as well. So yeah.
How can you be sure that you are awakened?
Well, no.
I mean, sometimes you can have the idea, okay, something happened, but I'm not sure if this is it or not, and suddenly maybe also that moment of awakening goes away, and you go back to the stage where before, and how sure can you be that you are finally awakened and not maybe giving a step back or
Well, no one wakes up, right? Okay, but yeah. So you're talking about a glimpse, then.
Yeah, you can. I mean, even sometimes it happens to me. I have a lot of sensations that when I was a child, and I had this kind of sensation of being in the moment that got lost with maybe through education or anything else. I always remember, especially on holidays, how I was able to really reach a state of mind and doing things that went away suddenly when school started. But that sensation, sometimes I identify this kind of being in the moment with that sensation I had in my childhood, but it goes away. I mean, it's with all this kind of this. I don't know. I also have a very stressful job of my own, and it's very demanding every day, and it's no time. It doesn't give you time to really reflect and try to even no time to meditate or whatever. But it's, I mean, that's. Sometimes when you mention the fact of writing, that you forget about everything and you go into the flow, but that sensation goes away, and it's, I don't know, for myself it's difficult to get that state of mind. Say, okay, I recognize maybe I'm awake and there's no way back, and I don't know.
Oh, so
How can you be sure that you're? I mean, you finally awaken and there's no way back.
I think you just stop caring whether you are or not. You know, like it kind of goes beyond that, and
Yeah.
you know, a lot of people when they wake up, they look for validation from whoever it is that they, you know, think is. I mean, pretty much everybody does that, and it's just the seeking will fall away. So it's not so much, you know, has awakening happened or not. Like when the seeking stops, you basically, there could be doubts, you know, but after a while you just stop giving a rat's. So you really, I think that's when it really doesn't matter. I mean, I think even with the most profound awakening, and I think awakening does have different depths. I mean, not everybody says that, but Steve Taylor writes about that. Yes, okay, so if the mind completely shatters and completely goes, it can be really, really absorbed. That could be quite deep. Maybe Ramana Maharshi was like that, I don't know. But it doesn't necessarily mean that will, even then there could be doubts, you know, like, because the mind is just, if your mind is like, if you've been a real doormat, people pleasing piece of shit, it might be very, very difficult for you to even own that, no matter how deep it is. It's a funny paradoxical thing that I think you just know there's just a let go of all of ideas around this, where you really won't care about that, and you kind of know, like there's a before and there's a before and after, which can be recognised with the doubts, but after a while that is just, it's not about, there's the tick box stuff, you know, there's nothing and everything we've seen, it's unconditional love, blah blah, but it doesn't help anybody. At some point you'll just, I don't care what so-and-so says, I don't care what they say, or even if I do care for a second, so what, that's just arising. It doesn't, nothing grabs you anymore, and I think it's just the end of that, you know, clinging on to, looking for someone who's an authority, somebody who's going to give me validations. I think that's just the end of seeking. If we call it that, then it's such a relief. I mean, that's all the rest, the experiential stuff of it is the beautiful stuff of it, and the unconditional love is what else matters. But it's amazing the way the mind can still come up and go, well, you know, well, I shouldn't be having these doubts, or so-and-so says, you know, when you wake up you should be, I don't know, look at this change in your character, that, I don't know, like everybody says different things. And the trust of the person at the front as well. I mean, it's just, it's funny as well, like, the way we give authority to all these people, like, because it's not innocent being up here either. You've paid to come in, there's the, you know, you've got to say something, do you know what I mean? It's like, so everybody's got a bit of persona. You don't know what I'm like when I get home, you don't know, shit. You know, And I think we just continue to project as well a little bit. In, you know, if I'm happy most of the time, I meet people and until I get to know them, I tend to think they're probably all right and happy. But yeah, there's no one answer for that, I don't think. But it's interesting. So you saw it when you were a kid very, very clearly. You know you were just spontaneous and you feel that was utterly lost then.
Yeah. Yeah, it's completely lost.
Oh, right.
No, but sometimes, I mean, I try to capture that sensation in many ways. I mean, through yoga and many schools of meditation and whatever. And I could really, I mean, think sometimes. I think this is it. This is what I felt when I was a kid, just being there in the moment and not thinking anything, just being. Yeah, but it's very elusive. I mean. But I mean, living this kind of crazy life we mostly live is so easy to lose this sensation of being in the moment. You're always trying to catch up and think in the future and I don't know. I don't know, but I mean that just. And I thought that maybe when you get older, there's a moment when you say, this is it. But then something happens and maybe everything goes away again. So, and eventually, I don't know, maybe you think, maybe you never reach that point when you say finally, but maybe you get closer and closer.
You just stop asking the question, it'll fall away, it'll just really, really fall away. Like, at what point did you realise did what was going on as a child then? I mean, when did you kind of realise that that's what that was, or? I mean, when I think I was very creative, but somehow education stopped this creativity and took it out of me. But I was very happy in nature and playing on my own and fantasizing and writing crazy stories. But I don't know. For me, it's a kind of like a goal, just to reach that sensation, that enchantment sensation. I mean, that's my word.
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah. But you forget about everything, and you just are there, and you are pretty happy and not thinking really in anything in the future or the past. Just being there and enjoying the moment. For me, was being surrounded by people and creating with my cousins and my little bunch. I was so happy at that time, and I don't know, that sensation is difficult to replicate when these structures and this. But anyway, I don't know where it's going now with all this crap. But anyway, I don't know. For me, it's a big reference. I mean, childhood is a big reference, and when I became a father, somehow my children made me reconnect with that sensations.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, you could feel how they feel, and suddenly that was what I was feeling in that moment, and I wish that they could be or keep that sensation for longer, but eventually through education and everything it goes away.
Yeah, I was going to ask you actually if it was I was going to ask, did you realise how special it was when you were young at the time, or was it only through getting glimpses of it in later life that you realised? But actually you said it's watching it occur in your children, right, that's given you the perspective to see.
Yeah, it's more the perspective, I think, but when you are there, you don't realise, because you think you're the best.
It's just normal, right? It just is. Yeah.
Yeah. But the time, I mean, when you think about it, it was, for example, for me, remember the sensation in September. I used to spend three months by the beach with no shoes, almost totally wild. Just the fact to put the shoes and go back to school was like a nightmare for me. But it was something that maybe at the time I wasn't aware. But when I maybe when I saw even my children again, they're just going back to their routine, and I felt sorry for them. It came the same, and I don't know. Wish we could find a mix of, I don't know, some way to keep that alive, and okay, we need some structure, and society is what it is. But we should be able to reclaim those moments and to, I don't know. But anyway.
I always feel like that's exactly how I was. I realised when I was a child everything was great, and then I lost it all. And I spent probably the last 10 years trying to find that again through different modalities. And then I realised that through trying to find it again, trying to find that freedom and that happiness, I just had to speak to like little me again. You know, just what would little me do? And even though I'm in a work situation where you have to be an adult and you have to, I find when you're little you have your own boundaries already. But they're strong boundaries, and everything is love, everything is exciting. And when I feel that now, I'm like, oh my God, I've spent years searching and trying to be awake, and it's always been inside me. And I never realised I thought it had gone, and I've been grasping on the outside world trying to get it back. And actually it was there all along. It was just the lack of the love had gone, you know? Like the love and the boundaries of self. Like they're not feeling good enough and they're not feeling lovable. All of those things have come in as you get older.
I didn't realise it came in with you.
But I learned it.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah.
But the awakeness was never lost, right?
No, it was always there, and it just, like. But I think it is with most children. In my mind, I think most people are awake, and then we forget. You know, we learn behaviours and we get put in boxes, and we try and be like everyone else. And then if you just try and reconnect sometimes, which is hard because we live now, it's like, that's who I am. Wow. Okay, that's what the world looks like. How did I forget this? And it's obviously hard for it to be a constant, but yeah, everything is love, and everything is beautiful if you have adult boundaries, I guess, in certain ways. Like once you put your foot down to something, I feel like more love comes in, if that makes sense. Like once you know yourself, like in searching for this awakening, I've lost myself completely. Like I felt like everyone was awake, so I was like, I'm going to join this cult, I'm going to go and do this, I'm going to go to Thailand and do this, and I'm going to do all these drugs, and then that's going to make me awake. But I don't want to be like how I am, when actually what I was awake. You know?
And the love scene would go on in that, like, until you just...
It just went, like, I guess you're born with this self-love, right, and this admiration for everything, and then we're taught not to love ourselves, and not to love certain people or certain things, and it's learning how to do that. Or for me it was like, oh, wait, no, I do love everything. Even that person that did something really bad, see your side of the street in that, and why have they done that? And if you find the love in everything, I think everything goes back to when you're a child. Your friend does something wrong and it's alright the next day, you know? I don't know, it's like ultimate forgiveness. It's like religion is the ultimate, like, path of love in a way. Like it's love without reward. And I feel like that's just what life is, and all the religions got lost somewhere. It's just love, accepting love without reward, and once you kind of get that, which is what you get as a child, you love everything, but no one's telling you every day that you are loved or you are loved. So for some people, so am I making any sense?
Yeah. And you kind of related that to boundaries as well, though.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting.
Because I feel like once you start putting boundaries up in a positive way, that's when, or for me, that's when I started realising who I was.
Okay.
You know, because I'd see like, okay, this is I should do this because this person's telling me to do it and it will make them happy.
Oh, okay.
And as soon as I was like, no, that doesn't sit right, no, I'm not going to do that, we both ended up feeling happier afterwards. Or even in work situations, things would progress more because you're in, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because nobody really talks about that, and I think it really is a massive thing, isn't
Yeah, I
it?
mean, I've only been doing it for about 3 weeks, but it was working. No, it's been a few months now, but I can see the progression from it. And I still see the little me in there, you know, the little one that was awake. She had boundaries. If someone did something wrong, she'd tell them. But I suddenly got scared at the age of, 8 or 9, and I was like, oh no, I'm not going to tell them they're wrong. I got scared. You
Right.
don't need to be scared. Why was that? And then now it's not being scared anymore. Saying, are you okay? Why did you just say that? Why did you just do that?
Was there anything to change you into becoming boundaries again then? Do you know?
I think I chose to.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
I
you
think
recognised that you weren't somehow as well as you must have.
Yeah, I think I've seen other, like, you learn behaviour, right? And I've seen probably family members and generational trauma and all of that, and you see people putting boundaries up and you think that's what I should do to fit in, you know? I should, not having boundaries and letting people walk over you or doing whatever, and I thought that's what I should do. I should people please and I should copy you. You seem happy, I'll do that. And they're not happy, they're depressed.
Yeah, that's.
How about the idea that, because when you started talking about boundaries, I kind of I wondered if maybe that which you're referring to as a boundary is actually you saying no to the no that had kind of talked you out of just being your authentic self to begin with. You know, I feel like, you know, what's your name?
Carlos.
Carlos. You know, when you spoke about education being kind of key to the dissipation of this sovereignty and state, you know, I feel like what happens is we quite often, society or our family or tells us, rather than just being totally spontaneous and being whoever we are in life and not caring what anybody else thinks, we begin to respond to messages that say, no, you've got to be this, you've got to do it this way. So actually that's a no that is education. You know, I think education really shows up as that.
But I think I was trying to learn to be like that. I knew I was wild or a bit different or awake as a child.
Yeah.
And it was weird. I was like, okay, this is weird. I'm not like other kids. And some of the kids. Because they were probably already back in the box. So I was like, I need to be more like you.
Because education says, no, don't be wild.
Education and society.
Yeah.
Well, it's culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's what we are eventually. It's like we are not alone. We are here, and everything that surrounds us is shaping us. And you get to a point that it's like
You think it's normal, so you follow it.
Yes.
But I guess that's coming from the perspective of that all children are awake at some point.
Did you notice the difference between you and other children, which I find interesting? I mean, like, can you?
I could at the time, I guess.
But what would you say that was? I mean, could you see it energetically? Could you just see it just the way they behaved and stuff? Like, it's an interesting insight.
Well, I mean, I used to sit talking to spirits a lot of the time. So
Did you?
So I was not the most popular kid. So that was obviously a start point, but also when you start like growing up, I guess, and like people wanted to be studious or whatever, I wanted to be outside. Like I'd be at the window like talking to the animals or being like, have you seen that plant? Like constantly distracted.
Right.
But as you are as a 3-year-old, but I was 10, you know, making shapes out of chairs rather than sitting on them, like constantly being told just sit down or do like, until I was put in the box and I thought, okay, I've got to be like everyone else or I'm not going to be accepted. So, yeah. But I guess maybe not everyone is like that. I just assume that people are. But I do believe that children, as children, we are awake, or at least we've got that magic,
Mm.
Yeah.
that gets lost.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still remember the day I first hear the voice in my head. It was like, wow, I thought I was crazy, and I thought that for many years until I read Dostoevsky and he was talking about the character voice on his head, and I thought, oh wow, he's doing the same as me. I'm not the only one.
So you
the
said
day, you remember the day you got a voice?
Yeah, the first time I heard my
Oh, wow.
thoughts. It was,
what age were you then?
I don't remember, 8, 9, something like that.
And what did you say? Something about reading Dostoevsky? Did you say?
Yeah, that in one of Dostoevsky's novels, the character, he's obsessing about something, so he's having thought, and I realized, wow, I'm not the only one, because I thought I'm the only one who is doing this.
All right, okay. All right, okay.
I'm mad.
Yeah,
It was so weird, like, oh my god, there is a voice in my head.
What do you think now of that voice? Is it yours, or is it the voice of
The voice
conditioning?
is still there, like it has been since non-duality, and it disappeared for quite a long time, and just came back basically when I get annoyed about something, and it can be very obsessive, and it's very, very annoying. It's like, gosh, it's sticky, like you say, I don't like it at all, and again I'm like, how can I get rid of this? It's like, oh god, it's so annoying. It's just, but it happens. It's like,
Well, sometimes it's fun. I don't know whether Dostoevsky was awake or not, but he certainly had, I think he was. He had mystical states, didn't he, from epilepsy? So I know that. Not sure.
I don't know, the book is this, I don't remember the title, when this guy kills an old lady.
Oh,
Crime
crime
Punishment.
punishment.
Yeah, so he was obsessing about
So making.
Yeah.
But yeah, I completely relate to kind of what you were expressing about seeing the wisdom, the enlightened state of that very young self. You know, I definitely had that experience where I had a significant shift. You know, when I was in my early 40s, in terms of what she's talking about, like a waking up experience, and mostly one of the things that I got strongly out of that was realising that my 5-year-old self was probably like the most evolved version of me. And after that began a process of devolution, almost, you know.
Yeah, I must say I was very lucky because I had a very, very happy childhood, so I can speak by myself, for myself in that case.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and I'm very grateful to very specific teachers. I mean, I'm not anti-school, but I wasn't even thinking about homeschooling when I had my kids, but it was kind of wishful thinking. But I can still think of 3, 4, 5 amazing teachers that made me a lot. And yeah, but I don't know. There's something inside you that eventually it gets killed with the time going and the whole education process.
Just thinking this side of the room. This side of the room's dying. They're all falling. Wait. What about you guys? You're all very quiet.
Well, I had, I always think of what Tony Parsons said, that the phrase he uses, meaning and being,
Uh-huh.
in meetings, and like you talked about how people can have like brief instances of seeing, you know, and I had that 10 years ago. I was doing various things to deal with a health issue that I had, and and I guess I was on what you would call a spiritual path. You know, I had all kinds of different spiritual books, and but I didn't know anything about non-duality, and I didn't know anything about Advaita Vedanta, and I'd never heard of Ramana Maharshi or Nisargadatta or and I went to some retreat. One of the things that I was doing was I went to a few retreats where I drank ayahuasca. And even in saying this, I know from the instances when there was this seeing, when there was this falling away of the self, I could see that there's no cause and effect. So I know even now I'm kind of contradicting, because it's still, now that there's a me again, it's like in my mind the story is I went and I drank ayahuasca, and then because of that there were these instances where the self fell away over the course of a year.
Oh, so it was actually after you took ayahuasca then?
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
But it was like, it wasn't in the, well, I had some profound experiences when I was actually under the influence of it at these retreats, but then when I came back to London, over the course of a year, it was like, it feels like within the story of cause and effect, that it did something happened because of that, and it was just like, and everything that you talk about, like, just the beauty and everything, and the bizarre thing as well was that when the self would fall away, it was like all of because of the kind of ideas that you have in your mind about what awakening is, like you feel like all of your problems fall away, and that's what awakening is. But it was the complete opposite. It was the self fell away and all the problems were still there, but there wasn't the Velcro of the person anymore. So I could just see like, oh, I've still got health issues, I've still got relationships issues, I've still got money issues, but it was like, there wasn't a self there that cared, because there wasn't a self there, you know. But then it would come, I'd come back, the me would come back, and and sort of around the end of 2012 was the last time when there was an instance of the self falling away, and there was just a lot of walking up and down the river, because a lot of the time this would happen when I was walking. I'd just be walking down the street and suddenly the self would just fall away. And so I kind of got it into my head, I've just got to walk, I've got to do walking meditations and the self will fall away. You know, I was trying to find like a way to make the self go again, and it just, I don't know, for 10 years now it's like there's just been a me here constantly, and I've kind of given up now. I was going to Tony Parsons' meetings for a while, and I just was hoping that listening to him, like something would happen. Yeah. And all that would happen, I loved the meetings because there's like lots of laughter and everything, but his meeting is his message is very much like, there's nothing you can do because there is no one. And I knew that from the instances where there was no one. I thought, oh, there was never anyone here that could have made this happen anyway, because there is no one. But you don't want to hear it when the me comes back. You want someone to tell you. Yeah. So, and I guess even now, the fact that I'm sitting here, I'm still seeking in a way. I'm still hoping that I'll hear you say something on some level, some like subconscious level, and then the me will just go again. Yeah, there's nothing to do. But kind of so what in a way, like so that... Yeah, I mean, I'm not, now when I'm doing stuff now really in any kind of what you would call a spiritual context, like meditation and things that people have talked about, I'm doing it really just to make the me, the way that people do it, who aren't aware of like non-duality and stuff, just doing it to improve my mental health and how I feel and make me feel more connected. And I do, like meditation is I find it really, I'm not meditating now to try to make the self disappear, I'm just meditating because you just feel more connected to people and more present and... Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. And so what, even if that thought, even if you do want the self to fall away in meditation, I mean that's just, inevitably it's going to be somewhere. Yeah, it's always there in the background, because once there's been an instance of seeing, you can't ever forget that. Yeah. Like, I'll always remember, like even if it never happens again for the rest of my time in this world, I'm always going to remember like those instances when there was no self, because you can't forget it once it happens. Even though I know that it didn't happen, like it is now the case right now. Yeah. But when it's seen and not just remembered as a memory, that's all it is for me now, it's just a memory.
Has there been any change, like any kind of permanent difference at all in how you function after the glimpse? Sometimes there is subtly, like, but you know.
There was in the period when it was when I was mean and being, where it was like my mind was just empty of thoughts,
Right.
and I don't mean in like a stupid way. I mean like it was just I wasn't in the past or the present or.
Yeah, I get that.
It was like it was being in a constant state of meditation, even in between the instances when there was no self, but not now. Like I've gone back into all the drama of life in the past 10 years and relationship stuff, and that's what makes me like. That's when I want the self. That's when I most want the self to fall away again. When I'm in the drama of the me.
But is there a physical difference? Because I mean, that's quite a long period of time to kind of be no mind and, you know, open like that. Is there a kind of visceral sense of like constrictions come back as well, or?
Yeah, and it wasn't like a year of no self.
Okay.
It was like, it would happen for a few hours,
okay.
and then the me would come back in, and then maybe a few weeks later it would happen again for a couple of hours, or half a day, or so it was never like
okay, it wasn't ongoing.
it was just it was like almost like a cloud passing over, or that's probably not the way to put it. More like the clearing of the sun for a moment, and then more clouds. So.
So you only have one ayahuasca ceremony, or you went back?
No, I went to these retreats like about 3 or 4 times over the course of 6 months.
Oh.
And again, even though like I know that there's like in the instances when the self fell away, I could see there's no cause and effect, but it was like when I came back from those retreats, I'd get a lot of fluttering in the heart area,
Right.
which felt to me like, and even actually heard Ramana Maharshi talk about because I'd always get it on the right side of my chest, and I'd think, why am I getting a fluttering on the right side? And then months later, I was reading, when I started learning about the people that you call non-dual teachers, I heard him talk about how the physical heart is on the left, but the spiritual heart is on the right. And I was
That's
like,
right.
Wow.
Yeah. It's the chakra. Speaking of the Sufi system, it's on the right as well.
But I know I'm even that. I know I'm getting into stories, but it's impossible to talk about.
But you do get a lot of experiences that correspond to the chakras. I mean, that's kind of just what happens.
Yeah,
so.
and that was, I don't know. It just all felt connected to. It all felt like it followed those retreats I went to.
Yeah.
And it was only like after about a year. I think it was only after I stopped having these instances when I started learning about people like yourselves,
Probably that'll do it.
Like Nisargadatta and all this, and I was like, oh wow, that's what happened.
So you must.
I'm not asking you. I'm not asking you how to get it back, because I know you're not going to offer me a solution.
So, like, even being in the meetings, you don't, do you feel any different in the meetings at all? You know, the way some people it seems to dissolve in the meetings. You never get that. It's just being like.
No, not really.
No,
the closest I get to it, you mentioned it earlier, was like when I'm meditating consistently. There are instances when I can start to feel a little bit like. The best way to describe it is like the self is kind of thinning out.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not like I go completely like I did in that year.
Yeah. Sure.
There's still a self there, but it just kind of thins out a bit, and it's like, oh, I feel more expanded. But I don't know. I still don't know because I know there's people that speak about non-duality who say, do this, focus on I am, or and there are people in the community now who say you can do something to bring this about, and then there are other people, obviously like people like Tony Parsons, who are like, no, there's nothing you can do because there is no one. So it's like obviously my mind wants to hear the people who have something to offer me, rather than. But then there's an intuition that, like when I listen to people like Tony Parsons, that actually, there's nothing that can be done. It's either seen or it's not seen. I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny, it can be quite easy to universalize like something that's an opener, seems to be an opener for you, like with some people the gaze, you know, and like I had a heart opening with just gaze with a teacher, or like, you know, it just seems like, well, or the walking or the sitting or whatever, because it does seem like it goes deeper in doing those things, so I can see why that's ended up being techniques as well. Do you know,
Yeah.
when you walk, I think the absorption gets, for me, the absorption gets stronger when I walk, when I sit, or when I gaze, or, but just, I notice it more. They all end up techniques as well. But for some people, it's almost, well, I suppose in the gaze, it's like your thinking mind is shut off when you're gazing as well, so.
Yeah.
It's sort of,
The only thing that I actually do, another thing that makes me, I seem to be almost on the periphery of of the self falling away, is when I'm in an area that I don't recognise. Maybe because I don't have the associations with what I'm seeing. So I don't have a story about it. But yeah,
I suppose novelty as well as the right hemisphere of the brain, and that's the big picture, and the mystical experiences tends to be from that. So there might be something about that sort of. It creates more openness anyway. I'm not saying that creates it, but certainly energetic experiences and stuff. And there's got to be something about that, because novelty, I think, as well. It deepens a novelty for sure. You go into a street you've never been in, your consciousness changes. It just does subtly.
yeah.
I think maybe being in a situation where there's no agenda at all, like sitting here, there's something I can see why things can shift in that, or I'm not saying awakening happening, but just that the mind slowing or whatever, or strange dreams afterwards, or visions, whatever. I don't know, but definitely, because I'm very sensitive to, but I know what kind of deepens this, or you know, if I want to get drunk on samadhi or something. I'm not going to switch on the TV set or something, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, like when you talked about creative stuff, I could, even though it's not the same, it still doesn't bring me to the instances that happened in 2012, but like I do creative stuff, and when I'm doing it, it's like I forget time. I connect with what I'm doing, and there's no, so that is like I don't know, I won't say a version of it, but you know, it's like
yeah, you're just plugged
it's
in.
freeing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just dependent on something, but yeah, I mean that's the whole. Yeah, if you're not, it's just whatever you're doing. It's a sign it's shit, isn't it? If it's really difficult and you're not in the flow with your
or you
creative.
know you're just doing something that's distracting, like the TV, you know, rather than something you're actually connecting with.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like a blessing and a curse. Sorry, I don't want to keep talking. I'll let other people. But yeah, like just for me now, when I remember it, it's like I remember reading Richard Sylvester's first book as well, and there's a bit when he's talking about just feeling awful after that first scene at the train station, because it was like wanting it to happen again, you know, and that's. I mean, I'm not quite in that place now because it's been 10 years, so I don't really think about it that much anymore, but for years it was like just trying to get it back. Just like pacing the streets for hours, like hoping that the self was going to fall away, and it was, yeah, so it's...
And then your life could be on hold, can't it? Like, it's so annoying. I mean, I hate to hear that in a way. It's like, God, you know.
And
I can see why.
You know, when you're reacting to things like the dramas of life and relationship stuff and all the stuff that causes you pain, and there's this little voice in the background saying, "There's no one here really," but it's just a thought though. So you're still. It doesn't help. It doesn't help to know that there isn't really a self.
Yeah.
What is when you talk about the me, like, is that the voice in your head then that you consider the me, or is it like there's me? Like what?
Depends on.
I don't.
Depends on.
That's the thing I never understand.
Because ego, like, the more healthy, healthy somebody is, the more it encompasses the body as well. So the me is the thought stream, but if you're like really identified with the persona, you just how you are in social situations and stuff, then your me will be just everything else will be just not seen. It'll be just like repressed as box, you know. So because the me is, yeah, the more integrated it is, the more it'll encompass the body and all the shit stuff and the hate, the, you know, the dark shadowy stuff as well. But yeah, some people just feel very much like a head.
The head is
But the healthier you are, it's more the whole thing as a kind of repression again. Because you can kind of tell when people are heads or people are bodies. I mean,
right.
you know, me. But I think the thought stream is really central to that because it seems so self-generated when it's identified with. It's like, you know, when somebody says that's not you, you can kind of see that it's arising spontaneously if you look, and then, because I know you don't get one, so it's a mystery to you, but like, it's just so hard to think, well, that's not me, because it's like, but yeah, and then it's just seen. It's like, what's that? It's not me. Yeah, it's really strange. But
So that's how you could lose self by the voice coming back. Or you feel if you have a self and then you think, is the voice you?
yeah, the identifying with that and the feeling of being the body, I suppose.
So you can still have the voice and be awake.
Yeah.
It doesn't
It's
have to
just
go-
not identified with, but it will be. I think universally, from reading Steve Taylor, like people experience it always as slowed, at least slowed down. If it, so it's never as, you know, it doesn't have that same hook, but it'll be slower thought and less thought, basically. In all cases, some cases none, and we're coming and going. But yeah, it's not got the same kind of hooks, or it doesn't have the same power. It tends to be more background. Sometimes it's foreground, but it tends to be more just the beingness and that. And if you've got trauma, of course, every case is different. Because if you've got loads of trauma, you get an emotional flashback. You just might go crazy for a few days and go, fuck. It's not supposed to be like this or something like that. But
Yeah, I wanted to know about relationship between awakening and trauma. And I had, like yourself, the glimpse of awakening that falls, that the self falls away, and I am nothing to do with the body, and I lost concepts of names. So the chair is not chair. There is no chair.
right, okay.
And everything is perfect as it is, and nothing has ever happened. Nothing has ever happened. And that lasts like a couple of hours, and it's just me come back.
Okay.
And then a couple of years later, I had that same kind of similar experience, and then maybe last just a couple of hours again, and it just me came back, and that was like 10 years ago.
Okay.
And I like yourself, I went to many retreats and read many books and watched many videos and gradually I feel that the thickness of self is loosened.
Oh, it's going? It's disappearing?
It's going less and less.
Ah, right, okay.
But very, very gradually.
Right.
But then when something triggered my trauma from my childhood, I had experience of neglect when I was 4.
Right.
And it was quite severe neglect. It was accidental in a way, but for child,
Yeah, so
it doesn't know if it's accidental or really abandoned from the parents.
Right.
And so that trauma self it's a really strong loneliness.
It's a slow
loneliness.
Right, okay.
Loneliness.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this the child feeling so lonely and the abundance and constantly looking for safety in the world.
Yeah.
It's a constant kind of looking for the safety.
Is that, do you get kind of emotional flashbacks with that? Is that the safety?
Yeah,
Just the,
it's more like the sense of loneliness.
okay, right.
That I don't belong to anywhere. Kind
Is
of
there,
thing.
is that quite frequent then? Like a desolation?
That is interesting thing is that somehow it happens paradoxically. When the more the self, the thickness of self is getting less and less, then the identification of the story was also going less and less.
Yeah. Okay.
And then somehow this loneliness is going more and more.
Oh, okay, so it's becoming more and more obvious.
Yeah.
There's no defenses against
Because
it.
there is nothing to distract
Yeah, okay.
from the emotion.
So
Because it's not so interesting story anymore.
yeah, okay. So you're raw. You're kind of really open then, aren't you?
Yeah, it's very much like everything is open, but there is no way to suppress.
Yes.
Kind
And
of
that's
situation.
painful. That's
Yeah,
really,
it is painful.
and scary as well. Because
Yeah.
those feelings are.
And then that
really-
started when my mother passed away this year.
So that was a trigger then.
Yeah,
So
that was because before that I was more in the story,
Yeah.
my work and my relationships, all that, and that somehow suppressed this loneliness. But now, but I'm not so interested in story anymore. Really not.
But yeah, you've got this. That's quite massive as well. So
Yeah. I really don't really not interested in my story, my life.
well, maybe you could just work with the energy of it a bit, you know,
Yeah.
because I don't know if going into the story is triggering for you anyway. I don't know because that's, you know, I don't know how it is for you, but you know,
It's like I'm in a limbo
yeah.
because not interested in improving my story, but then at the same time, this loneliness is looking for connection or safety
Right.
in a story. In a story.
But as long
But
as
I'm
you're
not really awakened free. Do you know? It's just
as long as your aversion to the story isn't some sort of non-duality conditioning, I should, you know, like, you know, so, I mean, I don't know, maybe you should, would you work with it? Would you, I don't know, see?
yes. I feel a bit embarrassed to say this. I'm a therapist myself, so I know how to deal with trauma.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, sure.
And I work on myself.
Okay,
But somehow this child doesn't want to let go.
Right.
Really, really strong. It's like a last kind of strong self doesn't want to disappear.
but maybe it doesn't need to be seen as an obstacle, like if you're seeing it as an obstacle, like, I mean, it doesn't have that power, nothing, I mean, which you probably know deep down, it just doesn't, I mean, it's like, it can encompass that, right, so,
Yeah.
I-
Yeah.
because that's the story too.
I somehow want to, maybe I'm trying to heal this loneliness,
Yeah,
remove the loneliness from this child. I want this child to be happy,
yeah.
not feeling lonely. So that's what I'm doing. So that may be resistance.
Well, not necessarily, but it's still, you're still, you know, it sounds like a contradiction because you think that you shouldn't be doing that. Like, I mean, it's not anything, is it? It's not resistance. It's not. You're still. You call it resistance. You're turning it into something. It's another block in a way. Like, and it's. It's not. It's fucking massive loneliness and it's awful,
Yeah.
right? But there's awakeness and it
Exactly.
doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter. But yeah. But even no matter what you are, like it. You know. I don't know. You could. You wouldn't work with. I know you are a therapist, but like, would you not work with somebody or look into it a bit more or?
Mm. Yeah.
It's interesting it's come up now, hasn't it? Like, so it's there to be seen and I don't know. You don't want to put it back in the box, do you? Do you know what I mean? Not again, I'm
Yeah,
turning it into
yeah.
something, but you know what I mean. But
Sometimes I wish I can, but I can't do it anymore. Mm.
yeah.
I mean, I read, have you heard of Eckhart Tolle?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I read his book New Earth and I try, I meditate 3 times a day and I try, what I've managed to do is the being below the surface, just watch your thoughts as a sort of play, that they're not your real you. Can you understand what I'm getting at? It's a sort of form of separating yourself from your thoughts.
Well, he's about the gaps between thoughts, isn't he? That's
Huh?
his method is about extending the gaps between thoughts, isn't it?
Yeah, to a certain extent, yeah.
Not negating the thoughts, like it's just because it's a difference between negating the thoughts and identifying with the thoughts. Because if you ignore your thoughts in a way, you just kind of you'll get yourself in all sorts of shit. Really, like you don't want to ignore all of them.
Yeah, I try to ignore the thoughts, you know what I mean?
Well,
And see the being
you
below.
can if it's just rumination and you're going around the same stuff over and over. Yes, ignore them. But I mean, just I think there's a danger in.
You think so?
Well, there's a danger if it's like, I mean, not, you don't want to ignore everything you're thinking because that's important too. You know,
I know, but when you get lots of thoughts of what's going on in the world, you know what I mean, sort of stress, you know what I mean, just watch it as a play, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, so you can do that, you can, meditate. I mean, like I say, I think it's just one method he has. He does mindfulness meditation as well and stuff.
Yeah,
Which is good, but it's painful to go around all the time. So you're not going around squashing your, trying to suppressing your thoughts all the time. That's exhausting as well. But if you can,
just observing them.
well, you can do that if you can do that quite. That's not stressful for you. That's quite easy to do, is it? Just watch, observe.
Yeah, it's quite easy to do.
Oh, that's really good. That's all right. Yeah, just don't ignore. Oh, you all right? I. Yeah. Have you increased the gaps in your thoughts then? What are they?
Well, I'm trying to. I've been in chronic pain for years, so I've got obviously there's a lot of trauma in my life. So
In chronic what? Sorry, chronic pain.
Pain.
Ooh, right. Okay. Yikes.
So I mean, I've always been a very sort of stressed out person. He was a little boy, you know what I mean?
Oh right, you've had it all your life then.
Yeah, so that's my strategy. Just be different from the life, you know what I mean? Trying to separate them.
Separate what?
Your being from the thoughts, you know what I mean?
Your being from the what?
The being below the surface, you know what I mean? The
Oh, right,
ego,
okay.
separate your being from the ego, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see where I'm coming from.
Yeah, from the thoughts. Yeah. Just
Yeah.
the rest in the body more. That's
Yeah.
I suppose that's more. Yeah, just tuning into the energy of
I
the
mean,
body.
when I meditate for it, I can sense the being below the surface, below the ego.
Okay.
Yeah, I meditate about 3 times. So I can
Oh no,
sense-
that's really good if you can do that because it must take you out. There must be a lot of fear around that. This pain, is it? Like
Oh, yeah.
it's horrible pain.
It's horrible.
It's about as constrictive as it gets, isn't it? It's,
Yeah.
Everybody's had everybody's had a glimpse pretty much, haven't they, at least. Like, it's just like, have you had a glimpse as well?
Yes, I was telling Carlos the other day that I don't know if it was because of Tony Parsons or Richard, because I was seeing both at the same time. But it was, yeah, basically seeing that you are not there.
Does it come back?
The things that happen is that gradually things started to fall away, as we say.
Okay.
Like I start caring about politics, about this, about that, and now basically I just care about fashion and money.
So shallow.
Yeah, it's been quite alright, but yeah, things calm down and yeah, I even lost interest in having it, because before I was like reading, searching and being in the song or whatever, and now I just don't care if I can.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's interesting, isn't it? Something. So everybody, I can't ask you. You're quite quiet. How are you with it? Have you been doing non-duality readings before, or?
I've been to meetings before,
Oh, right.
but I've not had any.
Oh, right.
Not had any spiritual experiences.
Right. It's just interesting to know if there were any people who haven't.
I find this stripping of self thing so interesting. Like, is it so like visual stimuli and things? Like, if you see something, if you have like an awakening or a glimpse, if you see something like a planet, let's say, is it exciting to see that, or is it like, because everything's stripped away, is nothing really exciting anymore? So then for me, one of my biggest, I'm not going to say problems is, but because I find most things beautiful, or everything basically beautiful, I need to be doing things or looking at things, or because I can't imagine that stripped awayness, because everything is so beautiful, and yet everyone seems to have that shared kind of quietness and enjoy it. Whereas for me, I look at a plant and I see all the energy moving on it, and I'm like, yes, like this is great. Like, I don't want to go away from that, so I can't imagine that strict feeling you will talk about.
What do you mean strict? Though?
Like quietness, I think someone described that as well. Like, I mean, like you, for example, you can sit in a room probably for 12 hours and not do anything and just be like, or you were saying like when people first awaken, they can just sit.
For you, it's different then, because it hasn't just shifted at all from child to you. Like, because you sound more like a puppy.
Yeah. No, it is. That's what it's like, and that's why I think when I kept searching to be awake, I was looking in the wrong places, because that stillness is kind of what my natural state is. So to go and look at a plant, or look at, not like a piece of meat, if I look at a piece of meat, it's dead and it's not nice to look at. Or music, the colours of music, or like I like looking at things because it's so alive. Whereas it feels like most people, when they have a glimpse or they wake up, they like the stillness and they like being able to just sit in the quiet.
Oh, because you've always known. Yeah, you've always known that. Like,
I don't have.
Why would you? It's like, because you're like
quiet all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think because I mean, for me that was the shock.
The quietness was.
Well, it wasn't the shock that's non-shocking, grinding and whatever, but it's, yeah, like, you know, fuck. You know, then, yeah, and then, yeah, just, so, yeah, I can imagine if you've had that, if that's just been your being your whole life. No, why would you? But then I wouldn't, excitement for me is, there's less of
it's
that.
calm still.
Well, less of less of that made some certain things could be, but less, because excitement, I used to get excited by things quite easily, but it being a kind of horrible, I don't know, just I suppose intrigue, drama kind of excitement and stuff like that. I could never have got excited about a plan play. But I'm not awakening. After awakening, I suppose for me it was just more absorption, you know, rather than for you it sounds like, I don't know, just even more magical than that, like just, you know,
But is that what, so when people say they have these glimpses or these, like, I think most people have said, is that what the glimpse is? It's pure stillness and quiet? Usually, like a strip away of self, like you're just not there, you're just quiet.
it's a restfulness, it's
Right.
just, I mean, that's,
Makes sense.
yeah,
Restful yet open.
restful, open and transformed and released from the madness and and yeah, and just the love and those are overflowing with that and kind of like, it's everybody.
So there's still a feeling there, even though it's...
Yeah, I think initially it's kind of like a sort of overflowing, like almost like just wanting to.
I know people always want to hug you and they've had an awakening.
Lots of, yeah, a lot of smiling, a lot of,
Yeah.
like you just want to communicate it to someone. Wow. Well, I think I was a bit like that, staring and smiling
Okay.
and
Nothing matters anymore, like the story is gone.
fucking absolutely gone.
Well,
Totally gone. I think that's what it's bizarre as well, because that should be surprising and it's not. Even that's so natural. It's like I don't know, meaningless.
I think that you might, or that somebody might describe as nothingness, which quite often is the way they refer to it in non-duality. Tony Parsons, for example, will try and like pull the trap door, you know, so you kind of get it all at once. But that could be described as nothingness could equally be described as everythingness. It's not nothing, you know, everything ceases to exist. Everything exists all at the same time. There's no differential in it. So actually, it's either silence and no energy, but at the same time, it's all the energy. You know, it's like Shiva and Shakti, yin and yang.
But the past is non-existent. It doesn't matter. There's no
Time is not is a concept of the mind.
And sometimes people can think that you're being, well, I found this, like, some of the words that you use, like I would say, like, everything's empty, but then I'd have to qualify it to the person I was talking to, because they'd be like, oh, and I'd be like, no, I don't mean empty like in the depressed sense. I was going out with a psychiatrist as well at the time when I was having these moments. I mean, one good thing is she was interested in like spiritual, she had quite a lot of spiritual books, and so she wasn't just looking at me like I was a crackpot, but she still couldn't, when I would say to her, there's no one here, and like this lady said, nothing's happening, and I'd say to her, that's the experience when, and she'd be looking at me like really trying to get her head around what I was saying, but obviously she couldn't, and I said, you won't get your head around it, because I can't really even describe it. But yeah, that was one of the things, when I used to talk about it a lot with people, it's like, there's all these words, and you have to qualify that it means something different from what you're saying, because otherwise it's like nothingness, emptiness, and people just look at you like, oh God, that sounds awful. Like, no, I don't mean it in that sense at all.
I swear, so many people open to it now. It almost seems a surprise when someone isn't, you know, isn't it? Like, it's just like the psyche is kind of much more receptive to it, I think.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
You know.
I don't know.
Well, maybe it depends where, maybe, I don't know, but that's my experience. It was,
Did you take the campo, the todo?
Canva.
No, I never. There was a lady there that I know someone who's done that quite a lot, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I found it very, very healing, but yeah, no, I never did that.
Because apparently that's the
Oh, really?
yes.
What was that? I missed that.
Campo is like a toad, the venom of a toad that
Oh.
they use with the ayahuasca.
Yeah,
no?
yeah.
Right, okay.
And that seems, they say it's like the infinite molecule that you take that and it's like you just see.
Yeah, I don't think it's like particularly like a psychedelic experience. I think it's more like a
Detox.
yeah, it's like a detox effect, isn't it? People get like
not what
quite sick.
not what I've been told and I read is just that you see like you are part of how you are part of everything basically.
Yeah, well, ayahuasca can be like that.
Yeah.
They're both essentially like
DMT.
DMT, which is
Yeah.
naturally in your body anyway, right? Before you die, this is why like dementia and patients and things have a moment of clarity before they die because it's released in the brain. We all have it naturally. Like,
Isn't it, and it's in the third eye, isn't it? Pineal.
Yeah.
So if you can access that, there is a way of having your own ayahuasca trip with your own mind without taking anything.
There was a doctor that did. There's a book about it. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called The Spirit Molecule.
Yeah, that's
There's a doctor
exactly
who did
right.
like experiments with people in hospital, like in a controlled setting, where he gave them DMT and
Yeah.
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 Right.
It's interesting because we have all the chemicals in
Yeah.
our body, right? Even
Yeah.
like people talk about that you said detox. You've got
Yeah,
a liver
yeah.
that does that.
Yeah.
You know, we have our own detox. If you can get
Cannabinoids
into
as well.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. Whether or not this is here or not, all the chemicals we want and we take, and it's all actually here or not here, but you can still access it without having to take. You know? Do you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I find that fascinating.
And ayahuasca, it slows down the DMT, doesn't it? It
Yeah.
slows it.
Yeah, it's like it's not as
Yeah, 'cause it's
like
only 10
it draws
minutes,
it out
isn't it?
over a longer period, so it's not
Yeah.
quite as intense. Yeah, I don't know if I could take DMT. People talk about DMT, what like they're literally in another place, and there's like alien. A lot of the time they talk about
Yeah,
alien,
it's very common, yeah.
Yeah.
but it's like as real as
Yeah.
you know this.
Mm.
But then is this real?
Yeah.
That's the question.
It's all just different dream
Yeah.
states, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe we can do ayahuasca.
Tastes like shit though.
Lots of vomiting as well. Not for me actually. I didn't really have much, but generally there's like lots of vomiting with it as well. So
Mm.
purging they call it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
supposed to be like a good thing. It's like getting
Did you do in the UK or?
yeah,
No?
yeah.
It's a whole other topic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really. But I mean, yeah, I guess it all points at the same thing. I did DMT a week after my original blown up and wake up experience, and it just confirmed everything. It just pointed the finger back at what happened 7 days before and said, "Yep."
Didn't
Yeah.
Eckhart Tolle do that? I thought
Oh, really?
he took, I'm not careful, I'm not sure for sure, but I thought he took like LSD or something after his.
Right.
Yeah,
Mm.
maybe. And is it interesting timing that, like, as well?
And just life presented it to me.
Yeah, yeah.
I definitely was not looking for drugs or looking at getting high in any way, and yet the universe just brought it to my door.
Because the worrying thing would be like, will this affect it or something? I don't know, but maybe not. It didn't, obviously, but it just,
that
just
too.
occurred.
That came across my mind, but yeah.
was it nothing really different than DMT? Did you take anything away from
No, it never took anything away. It cemented. It
Just
cemented
cemented it,
the
okay.
change that had
Wow.
Oh,
happened a
right,
week
okay, so
before.
it's part of your
It
integration
said,
process.
yeah, it just said, this is This is your life from now.
Oh wow, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So it's confirmatory, it's your
Yeah.
validation. What?
I mean, in terms of experience, what I would say about it is I realised that every drug I'd ever taken in my life, and I've done a lot,
Yeah.
that's what I was trying to get.
Right,
It
okay.
went all the way.
Wow.
It went all the way where every drug had tried to, had been kind of pointing to, but it just went all the way there, and it did it in like 5 seconds.
You don't think that's the whole that seems to be the whole human kind of, it's like behaviour, constantly looking for more. Like you just had this awakening, and it's like, oh, drugs, I'll take that. That might, like, to me, that's almost going backwards. It's like something presented, it's a chance to say, no, I don't need more. But you didn't, you took it. It's like that human takes over.
And
it's
yeah,
like,
from someone who has had a history of being a very addictive
that's what I
personality,
mean. Yeah.
I finally find the drug experience, after many
Yes.
years of being sober, I finally find the drug that is, the holy grail.
Yeah.
And actually my response to that was to say, thank you very much, I never need to do that again in my life.
Whoa.
Because it was clear. It was clear, it was absolute. What it gave in terms of message and experience was, okay, you hit a home run now, and you never need to touch this again.
Amazing. Yeah, cool.
Which is totally out of character for me, normally I'd be like, let's do it again tomorrow. But actually, no, that's
Whoa,
that's
so
fine.
that was it, you're done with it all.
Yeah.
That's awesome, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fuck.
But it just served to point the finger at that which had occurred a week before naturally, just through life experience. So, it's these substances kind of point fingers towards.
So you didn't need any validation after that at all? Was that that was it?
I didn't need any
You didn't need
validation
any
before
way.
it, and
Okay.
yet here it was delivered in a very strong form that made me
Okay.
go, okay. Yeah, I get it for sure. Okay.
Wow.
Just in case there was any doubt.
Oh, cool.
Mm,
That's really nice. Nice touch, isn't it?
yeah, thank you.
When I can't suddenly look at the clock.
Yes.
Oh.
I noticed when you were talking earlier, there was kind of, I noticed the, what's it called, not the dichotomy, the paradoxical nature of all of this, and you were talking about, about this experience of is of an absolute, and that it's, I know that this talk is, or this, kind of focus is called non-duality, and I realised that that experience of an absolute was actually the end of my identification with the self being the absolute. Actually, it was the end of the small absolute of being Bob and being stuck in my problems and only knowing this life, of being a human with all the human kind of problems. So, yeah, the absolute was actually the end of what was an absolute experience until then. And now, from that moment on, my experience was, my perception of life became twofold. It became, so this non-duality thing, the irony is it becomes a dual level experience of the small self and the big self, that the chap there said he can feel it trying to come through. So rather than it become, so my experience now is kind of a dual nature, because there's Bob and there's all these problems, but underpinning that is this other knowledge and experience and experience of life in the moment.
Yeah.
And that changes. That's what changed in that moment. There was a single level experience of life, and now there's a dual level.
Oh, I get what you're saying. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, you wouldn't get away with saying that in many places, but I know what you mean, because
Yeah.
it can be completely misconstrued, can't it? But,
Yeah, because it's like what you were saying about, you know, once you see it or once you know it or have a glimpse, you can't forget, right? Because it's you know 100% authentic. That much is clear, and it never goes away. And I was wondering, I mean, maybe you answered it, but I wondered, does that knowing bring you any degree of comfort?
Yeah.
That
Yeah, it does. It's like, well, just the actual memory of it is like, it's so beautiful when there's seeing without self there. So it's, the memory brings me comfort, but also, like, I do feel like it confirmed things that I'd always read in books, and like my feeling now about death is different, and but yeah, like I said earlier, it feels like a blessing and a curse, because
Right.
like when you've seen and then you're back, there's a sense of the me back again. It's like, fuck, is the me ever gonna fall away again, or am I just stuck with the me now for the rest of however long I'm here? Especially when like you're stressed about something like a relationship, or because like you said, underpinning it, there's this knowledge that there's no one here really, and this is not happening. But it doesn't help if it's just that's just a thought. Like
But so when you said about, you know, there's the memory of the event that happened, does it just live as a memory? Because a memory just sounds like a bit of data on the tape that lives that's in the mind, right? It's just a recognition of information. But does your experience, the experience of you now, have you not carried more than a statistical note that occurred? You know what I mean? Is there not a resonance in on some other level other than data?
I don't know.
Did you not come out with any, you know, like you said, that sense that this underpins the experience of the me, right?
Yeah, it definitely underpins it, but I don't know if like the day-to-day experiences of like the me, they haven't changed because of it.
Right.
So that's quite frustrating, because you know that there's no self, but then you're still having relationship problems and you're still having health problems, and so I don't know if it. I'm not saying I'm like, the glimpses I had feel like the most important thing that's happened and the realest thing that's ever happened in my life.
Yeah.
But yeah, like just day-to-day life, like the stuff that you want to go away, like when you're seeking an awakening, it's because you want all the painful stuff you want to be able to have healthy relationships and not have problems with money, or like all of that's just exactly the same as it was prior to having glimpses, you know. So.
Yeah.
Do you?
I totally get what you're saying, and actually, I mean, to me, that sounds like just the difference of what Little Bob's doing and what there's this other underpinning reality that is not separate from, but they're kind of, that exists. Me and my fragility and my flaws exists in this, in this experience of oneness and everything. So it's both at the same time. But yeah, I totally get it. But so I just wonder if that sense of relief at at the answer to the very biggest existential question, that is that experience. I'm putting words in your mouth, but I'm imagining it was at the time it was something close to that. Whether you're able to call on that in the very darkness of you, when things get really dark, can you sit and just really just drop in, almost feeling like, do you feel like you're not going to slip between the cracks in the pavement now in a way that maybe prior to that experience or that knowledge that there's a sense of don't have security, You know, when you spoke about security, there was a sense of security that comes from this glimpse in a way, right? Even if it's that nothing is secure, but
I had a near-death experience when I was, again, 4 or 5 years old. But actually, that is not memory somehow. When I bring it up, it's expansion still now.
right.
That is a good way of, for me, escaping into security in a way, because everything is just love. Everything is love.
Right.
Oh, no,
Even small particle of the air is love.
Yeah.
And that somehow this the glimpse of the self fall away, and there is no name. Everything is nameless. That was really good. But then this somehow that this experience is more stay with me.
that's the way I've heard it described.
Experientially.
Oh, shame we can't at the end because I'd like to hear your your experience. Oh.
So that's it. Just to ask, this final question. So that seems almost more real and more trustable
More real
than the human experience.
Somehow. But I'm quite aware this this experience. There was still me, very much me. Me in the center of this, surrounded by many beautiful flowers, and all flowers are looking at me, and they know me and they love me. So, but there is still me, very much.
There isn't always an ND though. Like I mean, a lot of people, it's the end off as well. I mean, I just from having watched them and listened to people speak, the awakening.
And all, sorry.
For a lot of people, awakening coincides with an ND as well. Like.
Oh right. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, from the ones I've listened to quite a lot of them. I mean, it seems to be quite common.
Right.
But for you, it wasn't.
Yeah, I would say that's a characteristic of the DMT experience as well.
Right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay.
Oh my God, I'm dying.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. I've never
I'm
heard
not
that.
gonna die.
Oh my God, I'm dying.
Oh
Right
my
now.
God, I'm dying.
Right now.
Oh my God.
You are dying as
Well, we have to.
character.
It's so quick that I'm dying as an absolute. It was the experience of it in a way. Such fear came up, but it moved so quick that I didn't have time to grab hold of it, and there I am on the other side.
Interesting. Okay, that's it, folks.